lessons that will resonate with you long after watching. Don't forget to hit that like button to show your support and stay tuned for more insightful content.
Emerging from the humble tribe of Benjamin, Saul was an unlikely candidate for the throne. Yet he was chosen by God, anointed by the prophet Samuel, and entrusted with the leadership of Israel. This was not a decision made lightly, nor was it a random choice. Saul was a man of stature, standing head and shoulders above his fellow Israelites. He was a man of courage, willing to face the daunting Philistine army. He was a man of faith initially, who sought God's guidance in leading his people. The rise of King Saul was rapid and impressive. From being a simple farmer, he ascended to the throne, uniting the 12 tribes of Israel under one banner. His reign marked a new era for Israel, an era of monarchy, replacing the former system of judges. Saul's leadership was characterized by military victories and expansion, pushing back the borders of Israel, and establishing a kingdom that would last for centuries. But it wasn't just his physical prowess or strategic mind that defined Saul's early reign. It was his relationship with God. In his early days, Saul was a man who sought God's guidance. He would consult with the prophet Samuel before making key decisions, and he would pray for divine intervention in times of crisis. This was a man who understood the power and authority of God and who acknowledged his dependence on divine guidance. Saul's rise to power was nothing short of spectacular. It was a time of hope and promise for the people of Israel, who saw in their new king a strong leader, a wise ruler, and a man who walked with God. But as the saying goes, pride comes before a fall. In Saul's case, it was not just a fall, but a tragic descent from grace, a descent that would ultimately lead to his rejection by God. But as we will see, Saul's reign was not destined to last. What could cause God to reject a king he himself had chosen? As we delve into the story of Saul, we come across an incident that marks the beginning of his downfall: the unlawful sacrifice. Picture this: the Philistines, a formidable foe, have amassed their armies, and Israel is under imminent threat. King Saul, chosen to lead his people, finds himself in a predicament. Samuel, the prophet of God, had given Saul explicit instructions to wait for him at Gilgal. Samuel would offer the sacrifices and seek God's direction for the battle. 7 days pass, the soldiers grow restless, their faith wavers, and Samuel is nowhere to be seen. Here, Saul makes a decision that would forever change his fate and the course of Israel's history. Instead of abiding by the instructions given to him, Saul, consumed by impatience and fear, oversteps his kingly boundaries. He assumes the role of a priest, a position he was not anointed for, and offers the sacrifice himself. The moment Saul finishes offering the sacrifice, Samuel arrives. The prophet is taken aback by Saul's blatant disregard for God's command. Saul's impatience had led him to overstep his role as king and encroach on the duties of the priesthood, a sacrilege in the eyes of God. In the grand scheme of things, it might seem like a minor transgression, a one-off incident born out of the urgency of the moment. But it was much more than that. It was a direct rebellion against God's command, a clear demonstration of Saul's lack of faith and obedience. In his impatience, Saul chose his own judgment over God's divine instruction. Through this act, Saul showed his flawed understanding of kingship. He failed to understand that his authority as a king was derived from God and was subject to God's laws. He let fear and impatience guide his actions rather than faith and obedience. Saul's first act of disobedience set a dangerous precedent. His unlawful sacrifice was not merely a one-time act of defiance, but a harbinger of the disobedience that would eventually lead to his rejection by God. Would you believe that a king's downfall could be his own doing? Let's delve into the second major incident of Saul's disobedience, which marked a turning point in his reign. This was the battle against the Amalekites, a tale of incomplete obedience that led to dire consequences. God had given Saul explicit instructions to destroy everything. No spoils of war, no exceptions. Yet, Saul chose to interpret these orders in his own way. He spared King Agag of the Amalekites and kept the best of the livestock, a blatant disregard for God's command. But why did Saul do this? Was it out of compassion, or was it something else? The truth is, it was Saul's arrogance that clouded his judgment. He believed he knew better, that he could decide which of God's instructions to follow and which to ignore. This wasn't just an act of disobedience, it was a display of arrogance, a challenge to divine authority. When confronted by Samuel the prophet, Saul attempted to justify his actions. He claimed that the livestock was spared to offer as sacrifices to God, but Samuel knew better. He knew that obedience to God's commands was far more important than any sacrifice. Samuel rebuked Saul with words that echo through the ages. Does the Lord delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as much as in obeying the Lord? To obey is better than sacrifice. Saul's arrogance had led him astray. His incomplete obedience was not overlooked. This wasn't a mere mistake, it was a deliberate act of defiance, an assertion of his own will over God's. And so, God rejected Saul. The king who was once chosen by God, anointed to lead his people, was now deemed unworthy. The divine favor that had been bestowed upon him was now withdrawn. Saul's rejection was not a momentary lapse in divine judgment, but a consequence of his own actions. Saul's rejection was now sealed, his crown destined to be passed to another. The tale of Saul serves as a reminder that obedience to divine command is not a pick-and-choose buffet, but a wholehearted commitment. The downfall of King Saul was indeed his own doing. What happens when you lose favor in the eyes of God? This question is a stark reminder of the fate that befell King Saul. His disobedience had profound consequences. It was not only a spiritual setback, but also marked the beginning of a series of unfortunate events that would eventually lead to his downfall. Saul's disobedience led to him being tormented by an evil spirit. This wasn't a random act of punishment, but a direct consequence of his disobedience. The spirit wasn't sent to harm Saul physically, but to disrupt his peace and tranquility. It was a reminder that he had strayed from the path God had intended for him. But that wasn't all. With Saul's decline, a new hero was rising. David, the shepherd boy chosen by God to be the next king of Israel. Saul's disobedience had created a vacuum, and David was God's chosen one to fill it. Saul's disobedience also led to his growing paranoia. He became suspicious of those around him, even his own son, Jonathan, and his loyal servant David. His heart was filled with jealousy and fear, creating a toxic environment around him. His paranoia became so intense that he even attempted to kill David out of fear that the young man would take his throne. His disobedience didn't just lead to his downfall, but it also led to his decline. Saul was no longer the strong, confident king he once was. He was now a man haunted by his past mistakes, tormented by an evil spirit, and consumed by paranoia. All these were the consequences of his disobedience. Saul's story serves as a powerful reminder of what can happen when we stray from the path God has set for us. It's a sobering lesson on the importance of obedience and the dire consequences of straying from it. The once mighty king was now a shadow of his former self. So what was the real reason behind God's rejection of King Saul? To understand this, we must first take a step back and revisit the main points of Saul's narrative. Saul's story is a tale as old as time, a parable of power, pride, and the perils of disobedience. His rise to the throne was swift, his reign was dynamic, but his fall was tragic. The heart of this tragedy lies not in Saul's actions, but in his character. King Saul was anointed by God, chosen to lead the Israelites. His early victories were signs of divine favor, yet as his reign progressed, Saul's heart began to drift from God. His humility was replaced by arrogance, his patience was overshadowed by impatience, and his obedience was marred by disobedience. These were not mere personality flaws, they were direct contraventions of God's commands. Let's delve deeper into this. Saul's arrogance made him believe that he was above God's laws, that he could bend them to his will. His impatience led him to act impulsively, making hasty decisions without seeking God's counsel. And his disobedience, the most glaring of his shortcomings, was a clear sign of his disregard for God's authority. Each of these traits, arrogance, impatience, and disobedience, played a significant role in Saul's downfall. They were the real reasons behind his rejection by God. It wasn't about his failures in battle or his political decisions, it was about his heart. God looks at the heart, and Saul's heart was not right. So what can we learn from Saul's story? It serves as a sobering reminder that disobedience and arrogance can lead to downfall, even for a king. It emphasizes the importance of humility, patience, and obedience to God's commands. It warns us that power, when not tempered with these virtues, can lead to destruction. King Saul's story serves as a sobering reminder that disobedience and arrogance can lead to downfall, even for a king.
Life persists, unfazed by the fall of a once mighty ruler.